Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a vast, unforgiving landscape. The sun hangs low, casting long shadows over the arid plains. The wind picks up, carrying with it the scent of dust and the promise of isolation. You are on the American frontier, where survival is an endless struggle, and each day brings new challenges, harsh conditions, and unforeseen dangers. Life here, as you will soon discover, was not for the faint of heart. It was a land where every moment was a battle against the elements, where communities were shaped by hardship, and where violence simmered just beneath the surface. In this journey, we will step back in time into the heart of the Wild West. We will explore the grim realities of daily life on the frontier, the unyielding struggle for survival, the conflicts that defined this era, and the stark contrasts between those who lived in extreme hardship and those who thrived amidst the chaos. As we immerse ourselves in the stories of pioneers, soldiers, and outlaws, you'll gain a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to live in one of the most tumultuous periods of American history. So, settle in, close your eyes, and let the sounds of history surround you as we venture into the pasta. World where survival itself was a feat beyond imagination. The why it sucked to be daily life immersion life on the American frontier was a constant battle against nature, scarcity, and the unknown. Imagine yourself waking up before dawn, the sky still heavy with darkness. The chill of the early morning air seeping through the cracks of a crude log cabin. Your bed is a simple cot, the blankets thin and worn from years of use. Outside, the wind howls relentlessly, carrying with it the scent of dry earth and sagebrush. There is no comfort here, only the urgent need to survive. The land itself is unforgiving. The harsh heat of summer parches the earth, leaving cracks in the soil. While winter's grip brings bitter cold, and the unrelenting winds whip across the plains, the weather in the Wild West never behaves kindly. Spring floods and autumn frosts threaten crops, and the scorching summer sun dries up the streams that sustain life. The balance of survival hinges on the unpredictable, the unknown. As a settler or a rancher, every day is consumed by the labor of securing food and water. Imagine yourself walking through the dry fields, the roughness of the earth beneath your boots, the scent of dust and sweat in the air. Your hands are calloused from long hours of hard work, mending fences, cultivating crops, or tending to livestock that are equally burdened by the relentless conditions. Every day, every step, feels like a struggle for life itself. There's no time for leisure, no place for ease. The days are long and the work unending. And yet, in this vast wilderness, you are not alone. The land that you are trying so desperately to claim is already home to the Native American tribes, whose connection to this soil stretches back centuries. The arrival of settlers has brought with it a storm of conflict. Tensions rise as both sides fight for control of land, resources, and the future of their people. Imagine yourself caught in the middle, with the constant fear that a quiet, seemingly peaceful morning might turn into a violent clash. The air is thick with the tension of encroachment, the relentless push of settlers, and the equally determined resistance of the indigenous tribes, who are fighting to preserve their way of life. As settlers, your survival is constantly at risk, not just from the harshness of the land, but from the very people who occupy it. The possibility of raids, ambushes, and the threat of violence are always lingering. Imagine walking along a trail, your mind alert for the sound of hooves, the crunch of footsteps, or the unmistakable rattle of a rifle being cocked. The threat of Indian raids on settlements is not an abstract fear, but a harsh reality that settlers must live with, day in and day out. The isolation adds another layer of difficulty to life in the Wild West. Most homesteaders and ranchers are miles away from the nearest neighbor, and towns, when they do exist, are often nothing more than small, struggling outposts of civilization. In the vastness of this land, people are isolated by more than just physical distance. The threat of attack, the fear of starvation, and the brutal conditions of daily life leave little room for community. And of course, there are the animals, the wild creatures that inhabit this land. You must constantly be on guard against predators such as wolves, bears, and mountain lions. Livestock is vulnerable to attacks, and you are left with the responsibility of protecting your livelihood. Imagine the weight of that burden, the fear that any moment could bring a devastating loss to your hard work. But beyond all the physical challenges, there is an emotional toll. The Wild West is a place where hope can be as fleeting as a desert rainstorm. The loneliness that accompanies the isolation of the frontier can wear down even the strongest of people. There is no modern convenience to soothe the soul, no electricity, no mail, no quick trips to the local town for company. Instead, there is only the long stretch of barren land, the never-ending work, and the ever-present awareness that the next day could bring new hardships to bear. As we leave behind the image of this harsh, relentless daily life on the frontier, imagine the heavy weight of survival on your shoulders, knowing that each day is another step in the constant struggle against the elements, the land, and the unknown. It is a life that asks for everything but gives very little in return. Now, as we leave behind the relentless struggles of daily life on the frontier, we turn our focus to the people who made their mark during this turbulent time. One such figure was Billy the Kid, a name that still echoes through the history of the Wild West. His life, marked by lawlessness and violence, became one of the most legendary and tragic stories of the American frontier. Billy the Kid, born Henry McCarty, was not destined for an easy life. Imagine the poor, barren streets of New York, where he was raised in a world of hardship and instability. By the time he reached his teens, Billy found himself in a rough, unforgiving world. One where survival often meant choosing sides and learning how to fight back. His early life was filled with loss. His father died. His mother struggled to support him, and by the time he was a young man, he had already been involved in various criminal activities. Billy's rise to infamy came not through any grand, planned rebellion, but through the violent chaos that consumed the Wild West. As a teenager, he was already learning how to wield a gun, becoming a figure feared by both lawmen and outlaws alike. Imagine yourself, like Billy, caught in the whirlwind of lawlessness, where the line between right and wrong often seemed blurry. There were no clear rules, only the unspoken understanding that only the quick and the ruthless survived. Billy's most notorious acts were committed during what is known as the Lincoln County War. This conflict, sparked by business and political rivalries, was a brutal reminder of how power struggles and personal grudges often turned into widespread violence on the frontier. Imagine yourself a young man caught between the tensions of the war. One moment, you're simply trying to survive, and the next, you're forced to choose a side. Thrust into the chaos of gunfights and betrayal, Billy's skill with a revolver became his ticket to fame. But it was also the chain that would bind him to a life of constant running and hiding. He became known for his quick draw and his ability to slip through the fingers of the law, always staying one step ahead of his pursuers. He wasn't just a criminal. He was a symbol of the Wild West itself, untamed and full of contradictions. The lawmen who pursued him, like Sheriff Pat Garrett, were just as complex. Garrett himself was a man of deep convictions, but in chasing Billy, he too became a part of this larger narrative of law, order, and rebellion. Billy the Kid's final days came at a time when he had already made his name as an outlaw. He was caught, sentenced, and narrowly escaped execution on more than one occasion. But ultimately, it was his fate to meet a tragic end at the hands of Sheriff Garrett, who tracked him down to a small house in Fort Sumner. The night Billy was shot, there was no fanfare, no dramatic showdown. Just the quiet thud of a bullet, and the young man who had evaded capture so many times was finally gone. As Billy's story fades into the history of the Wild West, it leaves behind more questions than answers. What drove him to such violence? Was he simply a product of a broken society? Or was there something more to him than the legend? His legacy, like many of the figures from this time, is one that blurs the line between hero and villain, between survival and lawlessness. Imagine living a life where every day is a new chance to fight, to survive, to prove your worth in a world that offers no second chances. For Billy the Kid, that was the reality of the Wild West, a place where the boundaries of right and wrong were often blurred. And survival came at a high cost. As we reflect on Billy's life, we move from the tale of one infamous figure to another, someone whose story might seem very different, but whose struggles were equally shaped by the harshness of the frontier. Now that we've explored the life of Billy the Kid, whose story was steeped in violence and lawlessness, let's take a moment to delve into the mysterious side of the Wild West. Amidst the chaos, there are tales of lost fortunes, hidden treasures, and unsolved mysteries that still capture the imagination of historians and adventurers alike. One of the most enduring mysteries of the Wild West involves lost gold and hidden treasure secrets buried in the dust of the frontier, waiting to be discovered. Imagine yourself standing at the foot of a rugged mountain range, the sun hanging low over the peaks, casting long golden shadows over the land. You're holding a map, old and weathered, its edges frayed and torn. The ink has faded over the years, but the markings still remain secret clues to a treasure that has been lost for generations. This is the allure of the Wild West's hidden riches. For centuries, stories of gold mines, lost expeditions, and buried treasure have haunted the frontier, tantalizing treasure hunters with promises of untold wealth. The most famous of these stories is that of the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. This legendary mine, said to be hidden somewhere in the Superstition Mountains of Arizona, has been the subject of countless searches over the years. The tale begins in the 19th century, when a German immigrant named Jacob Waltz is said to have stumbled upon a rich vein of gold while prospecting in the harsh Arizona desert. But when Waltz was on his deathbed in 1891, he reportedly told a neighbor that he had discovered the mine, but he refused to reveal its exact location. Since then, many have sought the elusive treasure, but none have ever returned with proof of its existence. Imagine the thrill and frustration of those who have attempted to follow in Waltz's footsteps, trekking through the dry and hospitable desert, guided only by cryptic clues and the faint hope of striking it rich. The mystery of the Lost Dutchman's gold mine has endured because it captures the spirit of the Wild West itself, where fortune and danger coexisted in an unpredictable, lawless world. But the Wild West wasn't just about hidden treasure. It was also shaped by the booming industries of cattle ranching, mining, and the gold rush, which brought thousands of settlers to the West, each hoping to make their fortune in the untamed lands. Let's take a moment to explore the gold rush, a pivotal event in the history of the frontier. The gold rush was sparked by a simple discovery in 1848, when gold was found at Sutter S. Mill in California. Within a matter of months, thousands of hopeful prospectors flooded the area, hoping to strike it rich. The rush was on, and towns sprung up seemingly overnight, growing from small outposts to bustling centers of activity. People came from all corners of the world, Europeans, Chinese, South Americans, and even Australians, seeking their share of the glittering gold. But the reality of the gold rush was far from the romanticized vision many had in mind. The journey to California was long and treacherous, filled with perilous conditions. Prospectors had to cross vast deserts, scale rugged mountains, and endure extreme weather conditions. Along the way, many lost their lives not from gunfights or raids, but from the harsh elements, disease, and sheer exhaustion. Imagine yourself as one of these gold seekers, traveling across the barren plains with nothing but the hope of striking it rich to keep you moving. The days are long and hot, the nights cold and uncomfortable. You dream of gold, of fortune beyond your wildest imagination, but you're also keenly aware that the journey itself could break you. The promise of wealth seems so close, yet so far, as you struggle to survive in this unforgiving land. The reality of the gold rush is one of fleeting riches. While some did find success, the vast majority of prospectors left with nothing more than the dust they had sifted through. Gold fever was contagious, but it was also dangerous. Many gave up everything they had for a chance to strike gold, only to find that the cost of the journey far outweighed the reward. But beyond the treasure seekers, the gold rush also marked a shift in the social fabric of the frontier. With the rush of new settlers, the Wild West became an increasingly diverse place. Miners, ranchers, shopkeepers, and gamblers all crowded into boomtowns, transforming the once quiet frontier into a place of frenetic energy and constant change. There were new opportunities, but also new conflicts between settlers and Native American tribes, between the lawmen and outlaws, and even between the newcomers themselves, as they fought over land, resources, and power. And yet, even as new towns sprang up and fortunes were made, the mysteries of the Wild West remained. Some stories of hidden gold and lost treasure may never be solved, leaving behind only the whispers of a past long gone. While the daily life of many settlers was defined by hardship, isolation, and constant struggle, there existed another world within the Wild West, one of power, wealth, and privilege. The lives of wealthy ranchers, lawmen, and outlaws stand in stark contrast to the struggles of the average settler. In this world, comfort and luxury existed side by side with danger and lawlessness. Let's take a moment to explore this contrasting life, where fortunes were made and lost, and where the rules of survival were far different from those on the edge of the frontier. Imagine stepping into the grand home of a wealthy rancher. The wooden floors creak underfoot as you enter a room adorned with fine furniture, lush carpets and luxurious curtains that filter the harsh desert light. The smell of freshly baked bread mixes with the earthy scent of leather and tobacco. It's a life that seems worlds away from the mud-churned streets of a frontier town or the simple, rough cabins of homesteaders. These ranchers, often referred to as the elite of the frontier, commanded vast stretches of land, sometimes covering hundreds of acres. They owned cattle, horses, and everything that came with it. Laborers, land, and most importantly, power. Their homes were a sanctuary from the chaos outside, a place where wealth allowed them to enjoy luxuries that many would never dream of. Imagine attending a dinner party at such a ranch, where the table is laden with meats and vegetables, wine flows freely, and men in fine suits converse about politics, trade, and the rise of new towns. Outside, the wind howls across the plains, but inside, the conversation is calm and calculated. The world of the wealthy rancher is one of control over land, over people, and over their environment. However, while these ranchers might have lived in comfort, their wealth was often built on the labor of others, often the working class or even Native American tribes, who were pushed off their land to make way for cattle and farming. The stark contrast between the lives of the ranchers and the lives of those struggling to survive is a reminder of the social divide that defined much of frontier life. The luxury enjoyed by the elite came at a heavy cost for those beneath them. In some cases, this power was not enough to keep them safe from the violence of the frontier. Even the wealthiest ranchers were not immune to the constant threat of lawlessness that lurked in the shadows. Outlaws like Jesse James and Butch Cassidy would rob not just banks, but also the wealthy ranchers, raiding their properties and seizing the spoils. Imagine a rancher waking in the dead of night to the sound of hooves pounding the earth. A group of outlaws, swift as shadows, might raid their home, taking whatever they could, and leaving nothing but the echo of their departure. But the elite weren't always the victims. In some cases, they were the lawmen, whose job it was to maintain order in the chaos of the Wild West. Lawmen like Wyatt Earp and Bat Masterson gained their own reputations as they navigated the lawless towns and unsettled territories, trying to keep the peace. These men held power too, but it came with its own set of dangers. Imagine yourself in the boots of a lawman standing on a dusty street corner in a town like Dodge City, watching the bustle of activity traders, gamblers, saloon workers, and travelers, all while keeping a sharp eye out for anyone who might break the law. The balance between law and disorder was fragile, and for the lawmen was a constant test of their skill, reputation, and sometimes their very lives. And then there were the outlaws, the figures who became legends in their own right. Men like Billy the Kid, whom we've already discussed, or Jesse James, who was involved in robbing banks and trades. These outlaws didn't just live outside the law, they thrived in it. To them, the Wild West was a place of opportunity, where violence was a currency, and survival meant taking what you wanted. Their wealth came not from hard work, but from taking what they needed through raids and robberies. They would often be glorified in songs and stories, becoming folk heroes to some, while feared criminals to others. But it's important to understand that for the average settler, outlaws were not seen as heroes. They represented the lawlessness that many feared. These outlaws would often terrorize towns, shooting their way through narrow streets, stealing what they could, and leaving behind nothing but fear and chaos. However, it's also true that some settlers had a romanticized view of these figures, viewing them as rebels who fought against the establishment. In the saloons and gambling halls, where the air was thick with cigarette smoke and the clink of poker chips, these figures would rub elbows with both outlaws and lawmen. In one corner, a poker game might be taking place between a cowboy and a rancher. In another, two lawmen might be talking quietly about the latest string of robberies. The frontier was a world where alliances shifted constantly, and the boundaries between right and wrong often became blurred. But while these men lived on the edge of danger, their lives were often marked by instability and constant movement. Wealth and power in the Wild West were fleeting. No one, neither rancher, lawman, nor outlaw, was immune from the fickleness of fortune. Towns could change in an instant. One moment, a man might be a respected rancher, and the next, he might find himself facing a debt he cannot pay, or an enemy he cannot outrun. The Wild West was a place where survival itself was a delicate balance. And even the wealthiest ranchers, or most respected lawmen, could fall victim to the chaos that defined this land. As we reflect on the contrasting lives of the ranchers, lawmen, and outlaws, it becomes clear that the Wild West was a land of extremes. Some lived in comfort and wealth, while others struggled to survive. The social fabric of the frontier was woven with both luxury and hardship, constant push and pull between power and poverty, law and lawlessness. And as we leave this world behind, we are reminded that, like all things in the Wild West, life was unpredictable, fleeting, and full of contrasts. With that, we have completed the exploration of the daily life, biographies, mysteries, and contrasting lives of the Wild West. I hope this journey into the past has provided a glimpse into the complex, often harsh realities of life in this legendary time. Take a moment to reflect on the resilience of those who lived it, and perhaps find a sense of comfort in the warmth and safety of the present. As you drift into sleep, let the stories of the Wild West rest softly in your mind. Like the fading echoes of gunshots in the distance, leaving behind only the stillness of the night,